Hi to whoever is watching at the moment. Just waiting for Hannah to join us. But in case you haven't read the description of this live, we're going to do a little bit of a recap of Exxence, which only just happened last week. It already feels ages ago. And show you, like, I'm going to show you some of the samples that I brought back with me. We're going to talk about our favorite brands, favorite stands that we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like, all that kind of thing. And of course, ask questions if you like. Henna is waiting to come on, and I will just let her onto the stage. Here she is. Hello.
Hi,
How are you?
you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. And you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool, cool. Hi, Ryan. We also got to meet Ryan in Milan as well. I don't think it was a secret that you were there, Ryan. So it was great to meet you. So I was just explaining to whoever is on here watching. Welcome to the stream. I think we haven't really discussed what we were going to do in this stream apart from talk about Exxence, which was only it seems like ages ago, doesn't it? Like it was only last week, right? End of last week,
Yeah.
yeah. But I've got some questions I'm going to ask you, and hopefully it will
Okay.
sort of open up the conversation a little bit and get people to ask questions as well. And Ryan, also, if you're going to hang around and you're available, you're free to join us in the live at some point. I'm happy to have you on, but just 1 second because I've just got a cough. Excuse me. Uh, Hi, Lane. Lovely to have you on. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so we were in Milan last week. The show was on between the Wednesday and the Saturday.
Hmm.
And so it was my second time being there. So I went last year, but this was your first time, right?
Hmm.
So what were your, I guess what I'm curious to ask you is what were your impressions of it? Like what did you expect that you saw, and what were things that you kind of didn't expect?
Um, I don't think I realized how much the show is geared to fire. So that was a little bit surprising for me. I don't know, I guess like as an influencer or you know what I mean? You're just so used to being catered to, and then you get there and it's like no one cares. Like they want to sell perfume, which totally makes sense. Like I wasn't
Yeah,
upset about that. I just didn't realize that ahead of time. And then when I got there, I was like, oh, okay, like buyers are the ones with the real power here because they are going to place orders and kind of like they're going to make or break some of these brands. Like that's going
yeah,
to be what makes the difference. And they're there to like learn, and they know what's going to sell or maybe what their consumer wants, like the person who's walking into their shop. Um, so they are also experts, but also they're going to buy in bulk and they're going to sell a lot. So I just like didn't realize that part before I had gotten
so I mean, it makes total sense. I get the.
there.
I used to have the feeling that influencers go to a show like this, and like, when I'm talking influencers, I think people who have YouTube channels or big TikTok accounts or big
Hmm.
Instagram accounts that consider
Yeah.
themselves, that's kind of almost their job, right? They're big
Yeah.
enough to just be doing that.
Yeah.
And I had the impression, my impression also, especially the first time I went, was that those people have this belief that they're more important than what they actually are, and Like
So
just
like
from
that was
talk.
me. Like I thought I was more important than I actually was. That I got there and I was like, oh, never mind. So like
Yeah, true.
I'm probably not gonna buy anything and I probably am not gonna sell anything.
It's
So yeah,
yeah,
feel
like
free to ignore
well,
me. Like
I'm
I don't
talking.
care.
I'm talking more about. I mean, I've heard, without naming any names, I've heard of examples where, some of these people would go up to the brands, talk to them at the stand, and say, "Look here, here's my social
Profile.
media.
Yeah.
If you give me some product, I'll help you." That kind of
Hmm.
interaction happen.
Yeah,
I'm sure it still happens.
sure.
But you're absolutely right. That like that. I mean, I'm imagining that Exxence was initially set up for distributors and buyers, retailers to meet brands, and have meetings with them, get to try their product, have the brand pitch to them, and essentially try and boost their business. Right?
Yeah.
And I know from talking to some brands, especially some that started off as like quite small indie brands, Exxence has actually really helped them a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it's been worth the investment for them to pay thousands of dollars to have a stand there to get that visibility. And
Can you mention any brands in particular that you think might have benefited from showing there in past years?
well, I mean, I think it's not. It's probably not a secret that a brand like Francesca Bianchi, who's been going there for the last several years,
Yeah.
has done really well out of
Hmm.
it. So I mean that's an example of one. Like, and I know that they've got a pricing structure for the stands that you have, like the kind of more out in the periphery, and the smaller
Yeah.
it is, the cheaper they are. And then as you get into the middle, into the main thoroughfares of the hall, you get more visibility. I'm guessing that those corner stands or exhibits are probably the most expensive ones because they get a lot of
Totally.
traffic through them.
And,
Yeah,
and
so yeah, go on.
well, isn't that interesting to see too? Is that you have everything from, I talked to this woman that had like three perfumes and her booth was just so like completely plain. It was just, the table with the perfumes.
Yeah,
And then we saw like brands that had like a screen, like a big screen, and they were like projecting stuff on the screen, and they had painted the walls of the booth, and they had like a really cool, like they had different kinds of shelving that went in. Like we went to Filippo Sorcinelli, and like you could go
yeah,
behind, like he had shelves on both sides of this wall. So you could go behind and look at a different display behind and then a different display in front, and tons of staff that was there, walking people through the scents and explaining the concepts and stuff. So yeah, like there was a range of how much money people spend or brands spend
yeah,
on
absolutely,
their booths,
absolutely.
right? Yeah.
And I guess like that kind of leads into my next question. This is more about not so much trying the perfumes and telling me which brands and perfumes you liked, but were there actual stands that you really like? Can you name any of your favorite stands? Not so much that you love their perfume, but just
Mm.
how they decorated it, how they represented themselves. Because I know that we've talked about there were a couple of stands that we really enjoyed, mainly
Yeah.
mainly just because they were really like I guess didn't ignore us, and they were happy to
Yeah.
talk to us and that kind of thing. So did any stand out to you?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, so me, you, and Ryan, we went to the Filippo Sorcinelli stand, right? And that was like an interactive, immersive experience because I'm not familiar with the brand at all, but he has a line of scents that corresponds, each scent corresponds to organ chords. And you could like put on these headphones and listen to the chord and then smell the perfume and read a little description about it. And I love anything that's immersive like that. And so that was very compelling. And I wasn't like a fan going into it, but I definitely left 5 minutes later thinking like, okay, I want to go sample these scents. So that was cool. And then the second one, which I think I just got really lucky, we went on Thursday morning and I ended up at the Les Indomptables stand
Yeah, yeah,
and Remy was there. And he's giving these people a demonstration. He seems to know these people. And then I just like picked up, bottle of perfume, like just like but just smelling it, whatever. And he was like, "Oh, wait, if you're gonna smell that, first you have to smell this." And then he like made me smell the raw material and then had me smell the perfume. And then he's like, "Okay, have you smelled the new one? Okay, we're gonna smell the raw material and then smell the new perfume." And so he like took me through like so many scents and spent so much time with me. And I didn't introduce myself. He didn't know who I was. I'm not buying anything. I'm a nobody. But he was so passionate and he wanted everybody to experience the scents the same way. Like smell the raw material, then smell the perfume. This is the concept. This is what this raw material is doing. Like for example, patchouli noisette, which is their latest one. So he had me smell the hazelnut essence, and actually extracted from a hazelnut. So it's not something that's constructed to replicate the smell of hazelnut. It's actually extracted, which is different. That's not something that has been done before, according to Remy. And so I smelled the hazelnut, and then I smelled patchouli noisette, and I got to see the impact that the noisette has, or the hazelnut has, on the patchouli, which was really cool. And I'm like in my patchouli era right now. So I was so happy, but he didn't know. He didn't know. He doesn't know anything about me. So I was so happy to have that experience. And again, left 20 minutes later, totally a fan of the brand and, thinking in my head, okay, I'm going to get home and I'm going to go sample these perfumes.
yeah.
So,
I mean, I was going to touch on that point as well, especially with I mean, I did want to try the Les Indomptables, but especially with a brand like Filippo Sorcinelli, I just kind of had it in my head that, you know, I don't know why. There was nothing really in particular, but I just had never had that much of an interest in trying
mhm,
those perfumes. And when you guys were listening to the music and smelling them, obviously you recommended it to me, and
yeah,
it was really good, and I kind of like I found that the stands where even if they were brands I'd not never heard of before, or had never really had an interest in trying, if they kind of took the time to sort of explain what they were about and show you what they were all about, then like that kind of shows a level of passion to me and made me
mhm,
more interested. And I might not have liked any of the scents after that as well, but at least it gave me an appreciation, and I thought, okay, well, I've given you a try. But especially with Les Indomptables, when Remy, by the way, is the owner of the brand, right?
yeah, yeah,
Just for people who didn't know that, so he was there and just literally taking the time to talk us through, the star raw material of each of the perfumes,
mm,
smelling the perfume, smelling the raw material, and really, really showing us how that material interacts in the rest of the perfume
yeah,
composition. And it was just really interesting gave you a real appreciation for the thought that they're putting into them. And you
Yeah.
know, as it happens, you know, like I smelled several of that brand that I had not smelled before, and usually I'm just for people who didn't already know, I'm pretty cynical when it comes to hyped up brands like Les Indomables. But in this case, like I can tell you, you know, with my own nose and watching Remy speak about them and smelling them. I mean, yes, they're expensive. That's a whole nother conversation, but they do smell really good. Like I smelled several of that brand that I really, really liked. You know, whether I get a bottle of them or not, I don't know, but I can
Yeah.
at least say that that those scents that I smell were really, really good. And I also now am more interested in smelling more Socinelli perfumes. And
And
Rich,
I
hi
so
Rich.
Valerie was there too. Valerie was
Okay.
there too. She was just at the time that I was there, she was just taking meetings with somebody else.
Okay.
So
But Remy seems like
Remy
he's
was
got
there.
like a quite a high level sort of position there at least, or whether he's
Yeah.
creative director or
hmm
who knows.
Because he also knew like the percentages of each of those raw materials in the perfumes.
Yeah,
And he would say, you know, oh, like Amber Supreme has this much percentage of ambergris, and that's why it smells like that. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
he was he was really like he knew exactly what he was talking about. So that was really great.
yeah. He was very engaging, very friendly.
Yes.
Wasn't trying to sort of get rid of us at any stage.
No.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, go on.
well, I was gonna say the other thing that kind of stands out is you know, you kind of need something that's gonna pull people in and like make it memorable for people. And you know, like yeah, Les and Dabba their stamp was very basic. They didn't have anything crazy there that I can remember. It
No,
was basically
no.
white walls and the table that everybody has, but it's their raw materials that really I think captivated people and like they were busy the whole time. Um, yeah, so that was, you know, you need something that's gonna make your brand stand out, and that was their thing. And then Filippo Sorginelli had like the display, plus the stories, plus like the immersive experience, and so that was
Yeah,
like you kind of needed something to get
yeah,
people in and then have
yeah.
them stay. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich obviously knows a lot about the brand. So, like
hmm
Rich, I know that Exance probably doesn't interest you for all the other stuff, but I think you would have loved being at that stand at least. I'm gonna
Yeah,
let
I
Ryan. Yes,
yeah.
I'm just gonna let Ryan on the stream
Okay.
because he was there. Hi, Ryan.
Hi Ryan.
Hello, Pep. Hello, Henna. Hello,
When
everybody.
did you get back home?
I got back late yesterday afternoon, my time.
Okay.
Time.
Okay.
Are you still jet lagged then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm doing okay. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning and couldn't go back to sleep, but I'm doing all right.
Okay. Great.
Did you?
So,
Did you? No, you go. You go, Hannah.
oh, you go. We're probably going to ask the same thing. Like, what stood out to you when you were
Yeah, I
there?
was
Like,
about to ask.
what was the thing that was surprised you when you got there?
I think what surprised me the most was just the sheer volume of investment in relatively young brands that we were seeing there, or brands that have not yet hit the stage, right? It was somewhat humbling to actually walk onto a floor and be like, I know 20% of what's here. Maybe that's even generous because
Yeah.
sometimes I would walk down the aisles with you guys and I would be like, I hardly recognize anything on this aisle. So obviously I could recognize, the bigger brands that were there, and obviously some of the more established and kind of respected niche houses like Les Indomitable and Filippo Sorcinelli and things like that. But I was just kind of stunned because I just didn't realize that there was still this much momentum behind luxury and niche perfume. Like this, it was very clear to me that this is still getting a lot of investment right now, and it was astonishing.
Well, there was this article this morning on there's like business of fashion and then there's business of fashion beauty. And like the article this morning was about how niche perfume is like the new big thing. Like we probably already knew like a year ago, but like now it's like, okay, all these like investors want to invest in niche perfume. And like this is like the new frontier of beauty kind of thing. It's like acquiring niche beauty or niche perfume brands and I don't know, owning them.
And Brian, you weren't actually at Exxence for very long, but do you? I was. This is one of the questions I was going to ask next. Did you try any brands that you were really impressed with that you had not smelled before?
Um, Parfum d'Empire, for sure, which I had never really sampled in any capacity. It was great to sample their lineup, and I was suitably impressed. I had a very cursory knowledge of Sorcinelli in the sense that I had tried, uh, to my knowledge, 3 Sorcinelli perfumes before coming to Esxence, and I was kind of stunned by the level of scale that was there for Sorcinelli. I I when I was hearing Henna talk about that experience, it that to me did something so right that I wish you could like other people would apply as a playbook, not necessarily in the sense of the scale, but in the sense of making sure that each perfume had like an experience element associated with it, because I think that really does help um, fix it in your memory in a way that it's, especially with some of these brands that have like a lot of different perfumes, it's very easy to get kind of lost in the lineup. And I think to Sorcinelli's benefit, that sort of connection with an auditory experience or just kind of like a very clear story that is linked to each fragrance is very helpful in navigating that. And they did that very well. And the perfumes are fantastic. And let's see, what you guys will remember the brand, but what was the brand with the compressed air cans?
I can talk
Oh,
about. I
Born.
can talk.
Yeah, you tell.
They were. That brand was
You
called
have the can
Step
with you?
Aboard. Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
I bought all my samples apart from the cans, but I'll put them in my video that I'm going
Okay.
to post tomorrow. So the brand is called Step Aboard, and I think they are based in Italy. The one of the founders, at least one of the founders, I got to meet and talk to her. She's actually originally Romanian, come to Italy, set up the brand, and so their perfumes are basically body and hair perfume, because most of the carrier of the perfume is water based, so it's kind of better for spraying on the hair. Um, I wish I'd bought the cans, but I don't have them in here.
I mean, it just looks like a can.
Yeah, it looks like
Yeah.
a spray paint can,
Yeah.
and so but there's no aerosol in it. They've got some interesting technology that allows you to spray with compressed air in the can itself, so you get a continuous spray, and probably lets you use it up a lot quicker than a regular perfume bottle. But Step Aboard is the name of the brand, and I'll post about them in my next video when I do my weekly rotation. But yeah, yeah, that was it. And Hannah, did you have any standout brands or things that you really like that you had not smelled before?
Well, the other brand that I discovered that I actually didn't get a chance to visit them at Esxence because they were always busy, was Himajomo. And so I discovered them in a shop in Milan, and I knew that they were going to be at Exxon's, but I kind of learned about their story in the store, and all their scents are natural. They're inspired by the Himalayas, um, so like a connection to India, which is where I'm from. And then I sprayed in the store, I sprayed one of the scents on my arm, and then I was walking around with it. And then I wanted to go to them and hear their story, but they were always busy. But then like the day I got home, a couple days later, I ended up buying a perfume. So that's the other brands that I experienced, not at the fair, but they were there. But hopefully they're like super successful because they were like just crazy busy the whole time. So I guess they're getting some attention.
Get myself off mute. In case anyone was interested, there were a few things that I really enjoyed as well. Like Ryan, I liked a couple of the Parfum d'Empire that I had not smelled yet, and also I've got these here. Last year, I was impressed with Manos Gerakinis perfumes, and
Yes.
these are ones I smelled this year that I didn't smell last year, which I really liked as well. And there was another brand I know that we spent a bit of time at, and this was one of the stands that was kind of eye catching to me, but I'd never ever heard of it before, and it's called State of Mind. Um,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and so I didn't know anything at all about this brand, so we got to smell a couple of things, and
This is
like
their logo.
yeah, so that's the travel spray that I got.
I feel
So
like
in
they were quite busy too, so you might
yeah,
be hearing about them. 'Cause I think they were taking quite a few meetings as well. We just
yeah,
ended up getting like stumbling upon their stand when they weren't that busy, right?
yeah, absolutely, and they had a couple. Some of these stands, like this is a brand before Exxence I literally had never heard of. I
Hmm.
probably would have seen, apart from seeing them on the brands list when we were looking at that. But they had a few people representing them there. They had a lot of people smelling their stuff, and a couple of the people that were talking to us, like they were employed as kind of sort of social media people or marketing people.
Yeah. Marketing.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah.
really interesting for a brand that maybe outside. I think they're French based, but maybe outside of Europe have no kind of sort of reach, like to have that to already be set up in a financial way. I mean, to be able to employ people to do that kind of thing. I just found that interesting, especially because we know so many brands who are one person operations, like and who are just sitting there on basically manning the brand, manning the stand themselves. So there's obviously some brands that go there like with quite a bit of financial backing. So that's what I found interesting on that level. That it's just not you've got your big established niche brands like Musk Milano was there, Nikolai was there,
Mhm.
even brands like Laboratorio Olfativo, brands that people have heard about. And then these other brands that are kind of unknown, but still have a bit of clout to sort of pay that money to be there, to employ people to be there. So I just found that really, really interesting.
but that's gotta happen in every industry, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's where it's like, well, my parents have like these vineyards, so I'm gonna start this brand. Like that, right? There's like a little bit of that everywhere. It's like so here's I don't know, have you guys smelled all your samples that you brought back yet?
Oh, no way.
No. I haven't either, but and I can't even like wear perfume in the mornings anymore. Like I'm just like I'm not wearing anything right now. But I have a friend at work who's like, bring me the perfumes, I want to smell them. So every day I go and I take like a little set and we smell them at lunchtime and then that's it, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm getting through them. Um, oh, where was I going with that? But so she said she's gone to trade shows and it's exactly the same as what we experienced in so she knows someone that like deals in eyeglasses and she's
Mm-hmm.
gone to trade shows and it is just like there's someone that's like yeah I make these in my basement and then there's someone that's like yeah my dad's like an ophthalmologist and so this is like my hobby and then it has a staff of 10 people and then there's like just like regular people that like just know what they're doing and feel like they can offer something that's new and different. So I think it does like it's in every industry where you have like a range of you know people that can do different things and are offering different things and come from different places. Yeah, that's okay.
Um, but with all the samples that we took home, I just want to mention, like, for anyone who hasn't been there, I think most of the stands that we were at and we spoke to and smelled stuff, I think a lot of them, like, especially if we like, I mean, I wouldn't ask for samples just because they had samples. Like, I only asked for samples of stuff that I liked the smell of when we after
Mm.
we tested them. So a lot of the brands there were happy to give samples if they had them. Like, sometimes they were out of samples or whatever. So that's, I mean, that's great, because like I came back with a big tote bag full of samples. I was actually worried that it was going to put too much weight in my in my luggage,
Yeah.
in my checked luggage. But like, now my job for the rest of the year is like smelling them properly, because that's the other thing. There's no way, like, some days I was there for more than 4 or 5 hours, and there's just no way that you at the third or fourth hour you can be smelling something and really getting an accurate picture of what that perfume's like, especially on the blotter, because you're not going to be spraying stuff on your skin just because you don't have enough skin to do that.
But to Lane's point, someone else said that to me too. Like, and like Lane, you've said it really nicely. Someone commented to me, like, what is the point? Because these brands can't survive because of all these other big brands that are out there that kind of dwarf anything new and interesting that's coming. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Ryan?
I think I think it's tricky because I think the path to success looks different for like some of these brands versus the others. Like even some of the brands that we like that have nice, like good, solid distribution. It's not like even if we start with like Les Indomadable, it's not like Les Indomadable is shipping vast quantities of perfume in the way that it would sustain like a DS and Durga sort of like market push at this point, especially with the sort of materials they're sourcing and kind of the quantities they have to produce, right? We've seen them kind of their perfumes go out of stock before, where they've had to kind of like take a break and kind of refresh certain items there. It's so I think it's very hard for me to gauge the economics of any given brand and what success financially means for them, especially when you see so many brands at Esxence. And again, you guys talk to more of these brands than I did. I was there for essentially a morning, just so everybody watching is aware. It's like I was there for a number of hours. That the owners are there, right? Like some of these are the equivalent of like mom and pop shops. And what I think could be helpful at a place like Esxence is just kind of like getting their name out there. And I think just because somebody owns a perfume brand doesn't mean they're a natural marketer, right? And I think being in a place like Esxence enables like conversations to happen and kind of like works as like a networking gate that could potentially open up new doors for those. So regardless of whether they're kind of like going to see like some vast scale of like inventory sales, I could see it being worthwhile for some. Now, I was also very overwhelmed by the number of brands that were at Esxence. So I think it's hard for me to imagine that some of these brands were coming there fully prepared for what they needed to do to kind of like stand out. And I've in my like actual career, I do not in this lane or anything really as kind of like cool and fun as like perfume or beauty marketing or anything like that. But I do trade shows, right? And you really have to come to those with a very clear like pitch that you are prepared to do and a very clear strategy for how you're going to stand out on the floor, how you're going to pull interest to your booth. And you can kind of see that not everybody is naturally thinking in that marketing way at those trade shops. But the nice thing too, though, about a perfume like experience like that is like you're just generally going to get people interested because they're there to smell things. Like at the end of the day, like there's a lot of meetings happening at Esxence, but like the crowd walking around on that floor is there to like is hungry to smell something that they haven't smelled before.
Yeah.
And I think that's an opportunity. So I can see why small brands that even aren't selling a lot of inventory would want to show up and be there.
I mean, I think you make a good point, is that success is different for every brand, right? For some brands, making the perfume is the success. And then for other brands, I mean, we smelled like 3 or 4 perfumes called Bianco Latte, right? Like for other brands, they just want to sell stuff. And it's not about the artistic side or creating something that no one's ever experienced before. It is just like, I want to sell something, I want to make some money. And that's fair too. Yeah, you have it. Those made me so nauseous. I like that. So someone asked, like, how much did you smell before like your nose like burned out? Someone asked that question. That when we went to that booth, that's where I had nose fatigue, at that booth. After that, I was like, I can't. I was like, one was Bianco Latte, one was condensed milk, one was like coffee ice cream, one was, and I was like I was gonna throw up for everyone. I would just give them to Pep, and Pep was like, "That's so good. Oh yeah, this smells so good." And that's where I had the most amount of fatigue. I don't know how much did you guys smell before? Ryan, you got fatigued pretty fast too, actually.
So just to be honest, there are 2 reasons I didn't spend a lot of time at Esxence. First off, I don't enjoy like crowds very much. Like I tend to get I love being with people, but I like being with like small groups of people in a like more intimate way. So like if like my experience had been to like walk into one of these brands' boutiques and I was talking with somebody for a long time, just kind of smelling their perfumes, I would have been fine to just kind of be there for a while. But like in a big conference environment with like lots of crowds milling about, that's just generally not my thing. So I was kind of like more content to just kind of wander Milan and smell the abundance of perfume that existed outside of Esxence as part of that trip. But I do also get fatigued pretty quickly. I can probably get through, like if I'm doing a sampling at home on my couch, I can probably get through like 10 perfumes before I'm starting to like tap out, right? And start to feel like I'm losing my gauge for what they are. Not necessarily like getting nauseated. That takes a little bit more, but
that
like
was a different level of
yeah. Like that was a different level. And just so everybody knows, like Pep, Henna, and I, we went out and we were smelling stuff in shops after the morning we spent at Assad. So there was just like, it was a lot of perfume that day. But I did feel like that, like I do get kind of like, especially when I smell a lot of things in rapid succession, it's very hard for me to start to really like hold on to it in my mind, which is one reason I say like I appreciated the brands that really like set like the perfumes aside with a bit of a story. Like it was something that you could really anchor into. And and that, yeah, that doesn't necessarily mean like the perfume itself is any different as a scent, but it does help. No comment on that. But I don't know. I'm just rambling here. So over to you,
no.
Pat.
No, well, I put Michelle's question up because like I don't know. I couldn't tell you actually, Michelle, because I kind of made an almost conscious decision this year to only smell stuff that like I wanted to smell beforehand, whether I'd read something interesting about them or heard a good review or something like that. So I was a lot more discriminating about what I tried this year. So thankfully I didn't smell too much that like really just turned me off. Or at least nothing is coming to the top of my head that did anyway. I just didn't want to waste time smelling stuff like I had no interest in the first place.
But I almost feel like nothing was a waste of time. Like everything was an experience, you know? Everything was like something you hadn't encountered before. So like even when we went to Parfum Dampierre, like you have some of their perfumes, you're more familiar with the brand. But we still had an experience there that we would not have had anywhere else, right? Not even in a Parfum Dampierre store would we have had the experience that we had at that booth. And so that was still good. Like, I don't think that there was any time that was wasted. Like, I think all the experiences were good experiences, even if we didn't love the perfume or we didn't walk away with anything. I think we still had a good experience.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And if I go to Esxence again, one of the things I would like to have done more if I had spent more time there is like just kind of like understand certain brands I was curious about, like in terms of like where they sat in the marketplace of things. But to answer Michelle's question fairly, I will say this. I think the stuff that really threw me was, and these perfumes were not bad perfumes. In some cases, I liked these perfumes a lot, but the perfumes I actually wore, because you start like applying things to your skin to see how it would wear, because you naturally get curious about it. And like some of the things, I gravitate to very dark, heavy, smoky perfumes. And let me just say that like by the end of that, it was just kind of like too much. And I didn't realize quite level of like how much it was until like I got to my hotel room at the end of the night. But like those kind of things were really like hitting me strong. Like I was wearing, I can't remember what it was called, but it was a cacao scent from Asmon, which was like very dark on my hand. And then I also had the Stephanie de Bruyne like Montebaco on my skin. Like I had like heavy things that were sitting, and like those just didn't go away, and they lingered on my clothes the next day. Like I didn't wear any perfume the next day after this, and it was still on
Yeah,
my clothes, and I was like,
totally.
I I'm curious. I want to expand on perfumes and coffees comment here. I actually haven't. So was the event as disorganized as some influencers I've watched have been sharing? I haven't seen influencers post anything about disorganization. Maybe if you can expand on what you've seen or what you've heard, but I thought, I mean, compared to last year, it seemed as organised as it was last year. For anyone who wasn't aware, it was in the same venue, but they had to move from the space they were in last year. I think last year, definitely my impression was that it was really crowded, even the days when the general public weren't there. So it seemed to me that they moved to a bigger space, and then because of that, it seemed like there was kind of a bit more room to move around in. You didn't feel like you were in in a tight crowd of people. So that was one thing. I mean, like checking in the first time you visit to pick up your lanyard with a pass. I mean, that there's always like the odd person where they can't find your name or whatever, but in the end you just always get given a pass, and in you go. So it seems I didn't personally find anything where I'd say it was disorganized. I know, and Ryan and Henna, you guys weren't there on the last day when the general public were allowed to attend. There was a long queue outside the building where we would normally have just like walked into the entrance. And I believe that a lot of the general public did complain about that, in on Exxence's Instagram post. They were complaining that they prioritize influencers and whatever then over the general public, when really who they prioritize are buyers and distributors over. I would like to think that they don't prioritize influencers more than buyers and distributors and
Yeah.
the people with the money, basically, because and so the general public, like, yeah, it's shitty to have to wait in a queue, but I think that I saw that queue move pretty quickly once I was there. So it wasn't like people were waiting for hours to get in. And also, the general public, I mean, to be frank, aren't the priority of Exxence brands, because they can't buy at Exxence anyway. Like, so they
Mm.
can't argue that they're the ones. Yeah, they'll be spending the money at retailers to buy the perfume, but, like, I think they
We
have to
did
understand.
we did see a bit of a wait that time when people were like they had like some sort of code on their phone and they had to like scan a QR code. Like
Yeah.
and so there was a bit of a line at that point, but you could have skipped that line and gone to like either of the booths and gotten your pass there. So it was literally just people that were like trying to find their code on their phone or their email on their phone or whatever it was. And if you didn't have to do it that way. You could have done it another way. So I didn't think it was very disorganized. I thought it was fine. It's pretty
Yeah.
normal for.
And Joe's made a couple of comments, but I'll get to them in a bit. Just to answer
Mm,
Michelle's question, I don't think it was consistent across the board, but that had more to do, really, from my experience, with having the people available to go through the product. Obviously, the people at the stands, like we were lucky to actually go to a couple of stands where we got to talk to people like Remy at Les Indomadables. I know we went to Olfactive Studio and we got to talk to Celine, the owner of the brand, and she was like on her own basically, and
yeah.
quiet. So it depended who you got at the stand, Michelle. Like some of them knew a lot about the fragrance, and some just didn't. And that's like, they're not to blame for that. They're probably just kind of helping out and spraying blotters for people to smell. But And
I
just
think
on that,
mostly, I think mostly brands were talking about their stories, not necessarily.
yeah, yeah, and a lot of the
Asman was talking about their oud,
yeah.
so
I don't think I spend time there, but a lot of, and also a lot of the brand owners slash perfumers or whoever the the primary people representatives of the brand were, a lot of the time they were actually in scheduled meetings. Like, so, you know, either distributors, buyers, influencers had pre-made appointments with them, where they sat at a table and basically interviewed or were talking about the brand on a one-on-one basis. So I mean, I didn't bother to do any of that. And I can understand why. Like, you get, you get guaranteed some time with the brand owner or the perfumer, and that's fine. And just on that as well, there were a lot of brands not officially exhibiting at Exxence, but they were meeting with content creators, buyers, distributors at a nearby hotel. Like, I don't know if they were using conference rooms or the hotel lobby or whatever, but there were a lot of brands that were taking advantage of Exxence actually just being on and making it known they were there, and not, not having to deal with the expense of having a stand there. So that was interesting to me. I was much more aware of it this year than I was last year. But a lot of brands are doing that. Like, they just know there are a lot of people in town, and they arrange meetings for them.
I mean, why wouldn't you,
Yeah.
right?
So Joe, and by the way, Joe, was nice to. I got to meet Joe
Yeah.
one evening, all too briefly, but it was good to meet you. But so he's saying, so some were upset about the check-in process. That content creators were called fragrance lover. Quite frankly, that is such. If influencers are complaining about that, they need to check their ego, just like quietly, like.
But they had content creator badges too.
Yeah,
There's
but maybe
fragrance
they ran
lover,
out.
content creator, and then press.
Yeah,
So those were the three different. I guess if you weren't a buyer, those were the three other badges you could get. So how they determined what one you fell into, I don't.
do you think a brand at a stand will? I don't know. Maybe they were, but do you think they were checking what was on people's lanyards and deciding
No,
how importantly they were going to treat you?
no. I think
I
um I think people that were buyers had scheduled meetings and they were there with like a budget, and that was really clear when they approached the brand. So
Yeah, and Joe, like, I mean, I've only been last year and this year, but yeah, I mean, it's chaotic just because it's so big. Like, I don't know how much more organized or in control of what is happening they could actually be. What did you guys think?
yeah, I
I
agree.
I would agree. I mean, a conference of that size is daunting. They had the floor as well organized as you could have it for that sort of event, and then a lot of it. I mean, I agree. Like, for those of us we had an Instagram chat, like going through like registration and things like that. There were things that could have been made like more clear. But in general, these kind of like weird hiccups happen for like getting registered and things like that. That happens at any sort of conference that I've ever been to. There's always something like that. It's it's I
Did
mean,
you
I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like these events are really about like content creators. Like, they're really not.
No,
Like,
I agree.
it's like you're there kind of like riding the coattails of the event. It was like great that we were able to be there and experience it. But it's like, if a brand had said to me, like, while I was at the stand, I'm not going to pay attention to you because I have a much more important person to talk to over here, like that is completely fine, right? I think that that's fair. And I don't know, like and also I think, you know, to like, there are days before the general public gets in. The days when the general public are there, everybody should be expecting those to be crazy. I'm astonished if, I don't know if anyone complaining was like waiting to do stuff on those days, but like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure all the serious business that there was to conclude at Esxence was concluded before the general public were let through those doors.
Totally.
And if they like really wanted to be, I mean, they could theoretically get more serious about this, and because the process was, if we wanted to attend the first 3 days as non-general public, let's put it that way, we had to register, and we had to provide a link to where we create our content, right? So whether it be a YouTube channel or an Instagram account, but like, if they wanted to be serious, maybe they could just say, okay, well, we're not gonna actually give you any credentials unless you have this many subscribers or this many followers on your social media account. Because as it stands, like, I know for a fact that, I mean, we're not big. We don't have big account followings. Like, I mean, compared to big channels, right? But, you know, I know there are people registering as content creators, you know, press, whatever, who've got less than 1,000 followers on Instagram, and as long as they post about perfume, that's good enough, right? And great, if Esxence is okay with that, that's fine. But then I'm not sure there can be too many complaints about that, unless Esxence turn around and say, okay, well, you need minimum 5,000 followers in one platform or whatever to be able to get in. I don't know. I'm just
I don't think they can, like, I think it's smart that they don't do that, because they can't quantify how influential you are. Like, micro influencers are more influential in persuading people to buy stuff than people that have a greater following. Like, Brian is more influential to me than someone that has like 10, 20,000 followers and is
who incidentally
just
might have bought those
creating
followers.
content, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, so like, I know if Brian says that something's good, I'm gonna want to smell it. And then the person that's making 3 TikToks a day and has so many followers, like, I'm not gonna buy a clone, right? So I'm just not.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that person's not very influential to me. So I don't think it makes sense to even. I think it's smart that they're not saying, well, you need this many followers. It's just like, if you have an account, you do, great, come on in. Like, we'll give you a shot, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'm not. I mean, I'm not like necessarily going to put myself in that boat, right? I have a relatively small following in the scheme of things, but I think it's very important for Esxence's networking aspect that they don't over police that, because even if we're getting just beyond this perspective of like actual content creation, what gets put on whose YouTube channel, who's putting it on the internet post, this world, like any world, if a fashion, beauty, luxury goods is relationship driven, whether a line gets carried by a distributor or not is really, it's a handshake deal, and it's all based on like, I heard that you guys had good stuff from person X, and it's impossible for Esxence to gauge who has the influence and who doesn't before that event.
You can't quantify that.
Of anybody, but I'm saying like that it wouldn't be in Esxence's best interest to try to like clamp that down, because I mean, it's a very like nebulous thing, influence. It really is. And the way it
Totally.
especially works on the buying and selling end is all backroom like handshake dealing.
I mean, and that goes to Michelle's question of like what the intent is, and if they strip it just to buyers, like I just don't think it's going to be fun if it's just buyers. Like if you only have people there that care about the dollar amount and just buying and selling, like that's taking a lot of the fun away. So I kind of think you need like the fragrance lovers there too.
I think that's right. Like I think that I'm not sure like if it would do Exxon's any favors to try and define what they're there for, because they I mean, let's face it, they benefit from all the exposure that
Hmm.
that influencers give them on social media. Because I know like there's a lot of accounts, you see it on Instagram in particular, the content creators going to Exxons. It feels like, I'm just going to say, it feels like it's more important to them to have a picture taken with a celebrity perfumer or brand owner than actually to talk about any of the perfumes, right? Like it's more like it's kind of like their red carpet event of the year. Like here I am at Exxence, and you're right. Like if it was a strict business trade thing, it like why be so public about the way they promote it and everything.
Totally.
So it's like there is an element of that. So yeah, like it really is perception. I used to be very heavily negatively influenced by what I saw on social media regarding Exxence, but until I went, I didn't realize that you make it what you want to make it. Like the way you approach it is the way you're going to experience it. So like, to answer Laurie's question, my answer I would attend again, because I had a better time this year than I did last year, and last year was great as well. So like it wasn't like I went this year and thought, oh, I'm not doing this again, because I actually smelled a lot more. I was actually excited for the first time in a long time that there were brands actually making interesting new things. Like that was the best part about it for me.
Ryan, would you attend again?
I would. I say that even as someone who has said that environment is not his favorite thing in the world. If anything, I would do it a little differently than I did my trip to Milan this year, but I would happily do it again. I would say, in general, this trip and experience, I haven't felt as excited about perfume, this excited about perfume in years, to be honest. Like this kind of event made me a lot more excited about perfume. I thought it might actually have the opposite effect going in. I thought I just might be kind of like fatigued by it, but I'm actually coming out of it like a lot more intrigued to kind of like come back to it next year, see where things are at, and focus a little bit more on some of the other aspects of Esxence that I didn't get to take as much advantage of. I think I don't know. I'll save those thoughts and let Henna answer the question. Would you do it again?
No, I would totally go again. And I have told this story like all week because I've been at work all week, and so everybody's been asking, how was it? How was it? So when I got there, 15 hours to get there from Calgary, I was so tired. I was like, we're never doing this again. It's so far. And then, yeah, and then as I was leaving, I was like, well, can't wait till next year. Like, I can't wait. So I would totally go again. I had so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Like
go ahead,
Mark.
Ryan. You can finish your thought now.
Oh,
Well, and one thing I was going to say is, I would, I think where I'm excited to see things go a little bit more too is I would say to like people I know who are perfumers, who are independent, have small brands, like I would tell them to go. They don't need to have a booth, but I think like it's such an exciting show to talk to people about perfume. You're never going to get that many people who are just interested in perfume in a single space ever anywhere.
Yeah.
And never have the doorway to just open up to interesting conversations. Some of the conversations that we had in the time we had together with people were just like so surprising to me and so interesting that I feel like that's a great space too. And so that's what I was going to say. It's not just like great for me as an enthusiast and, you know, commentator on perfume. It's like, I think it would be great for and I would recommend for next year too. I don't know where this event is going to go. If this industry is really seeing this level of financial interest and investment, like this is something to watch. This is an organic phenomenon. Like it's kind of like a new frontier for how this market would go. And I think it actually is a pretty cool place to be, especially next year, coming off of the heels of such a big Esxence event this year.
I totally agree, and that's you brought up the other point of the almost intangible benefits of going to something like this. Is that, well, for starters, I got as many samples from brands that weren't actually exhibiting at Esxence, who were just there, like people like Josh from Libertine Perfume was there as a visitor, but like I got to sample and meet, sample his stuff and meet him, Sid Botanica, and a few other independent perfumers were there. And if you met them and they had samples, they definitely were there to like let you smell their stuff. But then we got to, you know, spend time together, have dinners, drinks, whatever, with other people who we'd never met before, talking about perfume, like the one thing that we all have in common. But that alone makes it worth going to something like that. You could go to Esxence for one day, have your fill. I can't do crowds anymore. Like I hate crowds. Like it's really draining for me to be in that environment for so many hours. But then the best parts were like, decompressing later and talking about perfume, or going to the perfumeries in Milan and smelling stuff with you guys. That kind of thing. That's the benefit of going to a place like that and meeting up and talking with people that you already know. So yeah, like I think that's the intangible sort of benefit of going to Esxence for me anyway.
So this is
Yeah,
to answer Michelle's question.
yeah,
Michelle asked, they weren't exhibiting, but they were there with samples. What does that mean? So we ran into Nick from Gallivant Perfumes, and he is launching a new perfume called Nita. And we literally bumped into him, and he
yeah,
gave us a sample.
yeah.
So we now have it, but he was not exhibiting at Esxence.
Yeah, and he was handing them out pretty generously. Like he and I maybe said 5 words to each other. He was talking to Henna a little bit more next to me, but we were not with him for very long. And he was just kind of like there to hand out his work and promote it. And I think that's a very organic way to do it. You just don't know what conversations you're having and who you're talking to along the way. And some of the reverse of that is cool. Like Pep alluded to this, like some of the folks who are there would bump into pretty cool perfumers who just happen to be like wandering around the floor. And that's always a perk to, us enthusiasts that like, hey, I bumped into Andy Tower or something like that there. Like that's really cool too. But I think like it was really cool to see perfumers or perfume brand owners and representatives kind of just organically representing their work, as opposed to like sitting at a booth and waiting for folks to come to them, just kind of like organically letting conversations go where they were going to get.
And I talked to Nick from Gallivant Perfumes on Instagram, which is like so cool that we can do that in 2024. Like, if you like a perfume, you can talk to the perfume or like the creator of the brand. So he kind of knew me from Instagram and knew that I was familiar with his perfumes. And that's why, we could chat because we had had that interaction. But also, Josh from Libertine Perfume, he's from Alberta, which is where I am. We've never met before, even though we live 2 hours from each other. And then in Milan, like, we're all having dinner together. And that was the coolest thing. Like, we can't find time now. Well, we could find time when we were in Milan. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and there were people like on that topic. There, like I got to spend I got to meet Angelos who does Angelos Creations. So we were the same. Had been messaging on Instagram as well, and he said, "Oh, if we meet up, I've got some samples for you." But then what he did, like he even took a group of us who had been like arranged to meet, found a quiet spot at Esxence, and just literally went through his whole collection, and we all smelled together. Like, I mean, Esxence probably, I don't know how much they approved of that kind of thing, but he was basically having his own pop up stand at Esxence, and letting people smell that there. Yeah, so like like I said, I think definitely for the people who've questioned it before, do it for yourself, experience it yourself. Like, I mean, apart from traveling there, it's free to get in, right? And so you go experience it. You might hate it, but like, go in with an open mind, and don't feel like it's like an influencer event. I think though, like, to Jonathan's comment here, I think there should be. I think big influencers who go there to be seen, I guess, like, do kind of have a responsibility if they're smelling stuff that they like, to talk about it at least, because then the people who follow them will have brands on their radar. And I'm not talking about only the brands that do business with them and give them free bottles or whatever, even though that's going to happen. But yeah, like, I think if we find brands and perfumes that we feel like are good discoveries, we should then talk about them more for the people who didn't get a chance to go.
I think to a degree
So
you need to leave your house too. Like, eventually you need to leave your house and go experience the world.
yeah,
Whatever you're doing. So I think there's value in that. Even if you only go for like an hour and then you feel like it's too much, that's okay. Like, you should still leave your house and see what's going on outside of your door. Because you can buy the decants and order the sample sets, but until you see people and talk to people, like, you're not really getting a sense of what's going on in the world outside your house. You need to do that. You do.
I believe, like, I took this when I heard that folks were going to Esxence, and this was kind of building steam among like certain folks like yourselves who I've been talking to for years, and I was like, okay, these people are going to be there. I saw this as an opportunity I've wanted to go back to Italy for years. I went as like a teenager a long time ago, and was like, okay, I haven't taken an international vacation in a very long time. I'm just going to go and have fun in Italy. And if I don't like Esxence, the worst case scenario is I'm in Milan. I'm going to have a good time, right? And I think, like, you can have a very open mind about like how you want that to go. Just because you sign up for Esxence does not mean you have to spend all your days at Esxence. And in fact, like, I one of my questions that I want to ask Pep and Henna, because like because I think this would be good, because I want to plan for next time too. Like, was there an ideal time of day that you thought like things quieted down a little bit and was actually giving you the better experience? Because like peak versus non-peak hours for the floor.
What you want me to? So I think the beginning of the day and the end of the day were the best times. So if you went at 11, like we told you, don't go at 10:30 because there's a huge line at 10:30. But 11, there's not as much of a line. Yes, you still have to like line up to check your coat, but there's not a long line. And then you get in. So 11 o'clock is good in the morning, and then like 5:30 in the evening, that is a good time if you don't like crowds. So if you can make it for those two times, I think those are the best times. And then from like, 2 to 5, you go have your lunch, take a nap, go see the town, like do all those. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Like the morning, because you missed just after you missed the lineup, but the first thing, as soon as it opens, a lot of people will be there and they've already planned where they're going first. So you can just expect that some stands might have people there, but at least you can walk in and know that not every stand is going to be like swarming with people. And like Henna said, on one day we got there like pretty late, like it was probably 5:30, but and I think they closed at 6:30 for the day, and
They
it was
closed
really
at
good.
6.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and they just had that much more, I guess, time to talk to you, and there was less people around, and they were kind of winding down for the day. I don't know, just had a completely different feel about it.
Yeah.
I just want to answer Michelle's question. I don't know if we did before, but yeah. So there are a lot of independent perfumers who attend, like just as visitors, but they will have supply with them. And if you know them or start chatting with them, a lot of the time they're more than happy to give you samples of what they have. But you can't just sort of find out who's going to be there. It's like it's a bit of talking to people beforehand, saying if they're going to be there, and just saying, well, if you see me, say hi, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. But it happens a lot, Michelle. So yeah, um, and Joe makes a good point. Yeah, that's the thing. Like if the least that happens is you discover one brand, one perfume that you like, I don't know. I think it's kind of worth it just for that.
I it, so speaking as an impoverished North American, where we have brands like that have generally been pulling out of the American market, like Serge Luton and many and others struggling to find their footing. Like, just being in Milan was like I had access to things that I'm not going to have access to here. For example, like the new Guerlain releases of the parfum editions of Hobby Rouge and Vetiver. I'm probably never going to see them over here in the States. It is highly unlikely they will be carried anywhere near me. So like that's cool to just even go overseas to like Milan, where they literally had like every major perfume that could be distributed was somewhere in Milan. Um, and then at Esxence, like there are perfumes I'm still kind of thinking about from that experience that you know have stayed with me, and I think that was totally worth the time there.
I mean, shopping was my favorite thing.
Mm.
I know everyone is going to be so surprised, like just take your jaw off the floor. I was really into the shopping, and I didn't even know that I would be into it as much as I was. But yes, aside from Exxons, I really enjoyed shopping. And yeah, like Ryan said, like every single brand has their own store. The distributors have their own stores, and then you can go into the perfumeries that have niche or they have mainstream, whatever they have. There's just so much to smell outside of the show. So that
There's
was
very
definitely,
there's very little that you cannot find, at least where we went anyway. Like we went to
yeah.
a handful of, and like we even I want to mention as well. We went into the store for the Merchant of Venice perfume brand, which is a brand I've kind of just ignored over time. But even doing that, just going in and letting the store whoever's manning the store talking about the perfumes, letting us try it, and we had the store to ourselves, pretty much because it was quiet time of the day, and that was like fun. That was so much fun to do, and like I smelled a couple of things I really liked from that brand, which I would never ever have done before.
Yeah.
And Mark, if you do come next year, we'll definitely go out for dinner. And anyone else who wants to come as well, including you, Eve.
Rachel asked, who here is a hermit?
I'm a hermit, but I love traveling overseas.
I love traveling and wandering, but I'm generally like this room you're seeing here is actually like my work office, and I pretty much like spend most of my life in this room. So like yeah, I guess I qualify as a hermit by default.
I'm not a hermit. I was the one that was like, join us, join us. We're over here. We're over here. We're over here. So yeah, I'm not a hermit.
That's why I
Yeah,
like sampling perfume with you, because you were the person who would like ask for samples, whereas I was just kind of like I would just like shut down inside. I'll just you.
That's because I'm Indian. That has nothing to do with being a hermit. That's like my mother. That's like she would return things after like the end date and would embarrass us all. So now I just feel no embarrassment. Even at Exxence, I was like, "Do you have samples of these?" And the best places, that this booth is legit, really good, is when they say, "Which one is your favorite? Which one did you like the most?" And then they would just give you a sample of that. And I think Parfum Dampierre did that. They were like, which one do you want to sample? They would just give you a sample of that. So those are the good booths, because then they're like looking at you and paying attention to you, and they only want to give out what they think you will enjoy, which is
yeah,
the way it should be.
yeah,
I thought the
yeah.
Parfum d'Empire booth, while we're singling out booths, they didn't like do any of like the show-stopping like fireworks that I've talked about, but I thought their
Yeah,
booth was excellent. The people they
Yeah.
had
yeah,
winning it were clearly enthusiastic about the
yeah,
perfumes. They were talking about the ones they enjoyed wearing. It wasn't like they felt like they had no relationship to the brand. Some of these booths literally felt like somebody had been like hired the week before to represent whatever they were showcasing, had that level of like emotional connection. But the Parfum d'Empire stand was great. And it yeah, I really loved that. And
Yeah,
that
they definitely backed up their product. Like I already knew it was a good product, and their brand kind of like really personified that as well. Like the people talking to us about the brand, like they just really represented the brand really well. And I think even like I think he was at the table when we were there talking to other people, but Marc Antoine Corticchiato, the perfumer, the brand owner of Parfum d'Empire, he was there as well, and apparently he was. I didn't get to meet him, but apparently he was lovely, like in person to talk to.
you can tell. And I mean, as much as we like to talk about, I've been thinking about this a lot because it's like we talk about like or at least some of us do talk about like trying to judge perfume as like objectively as you can. There's something to just be said for like having a great experience with people who work for a brand, and that the way that it builds your emotional connection to that fragrance and what it represents to you. It's not just kind of like an impersonal cash transaction in order to fragrance net for a certain dollar amount or whatever it is. You know,
totally. I think the most disappointing experience I had was Nila Vermeer. And so, like, Nila Vermeer is Indian. The perfumes are made by Bertrand Duchesbourg, who I love. And so her perfumes were there, and she had hired someone to sit at the booth along with some other scents. And so the scents were on like a really high shelf. And I went there and I said, "Hey, can I smell these perfumes?" And she said, "Yeah, go ahead." So she sat in her chair and I was like reaching up and pulling these perfume bottles down and spraying them and smelling them. She didn't talk to me at all. She didn't bother me, which like I would like in a store, but I was expecting more at Esxence, like, walk me through them or like give me an experience. She didn't do any of that, and that's fine. Um, I wanted to smell Bombay Bling. They didn't have Bombay Bling, and that was the end of that. I must have spent like 3 minutes there, and I walked away uninspired, kind of disappointed. Um, so like there was that experience too, and then now I'm just like, well, there's other brands. Like there's so
Yeah.
many other brands to experience that I'm not gonna spend my money there.
I kind of, I wasn't, it wasn't a negative experience for me, but I kind of felt um, like my weird experience was when we were smelling the Steve Martin perfumes,
Yeah.
and then like so for anyone who's heard of Steve Martin perfumes, they've got a line of perfumes that are all inspired by famous rivers of the world, right? So they've got one for the Nile, they've got the Mississippi, and I can't remember the others, but they were interesting enough perfumes. But the two people there were like really, I think were we asking more about like where can we buy, where can
Yeah.
we buy these perfumes? And it was really, really kind of vague because I don't,
There's like two stores in the whole world that you can
yeah,
buy them. They
yeah,
didn't have them there, and they were interested in selling them, but no samples.
yeah,
And so it's kind of like that was really one of the booths where it was like, okay, someone is like funding this, has a lot of money, but like you only want people that will blind buy your perfume.
yeah, because you couldn't get samples, right?
No.
No,
And they were all okay. Like
yeah,
there was a rose patchouli that's like I literally took out the cards today, and the rose patchouli smells really good, but it is just still a rose patchouli, so I don't
yeah.
know. It's kind of like whatever.
Michelle, to answer your question that I've put up on screen, so I already own three Parfum d'Empire, and I tried several that I had not tried before, and these two were the samples that I asked for, the Uzu Fu and Corsica Furiosa, and Hannah liked Eau de Gloire.
I asked for Eau de Gloire because it comes in a new limited edition bottle, so I wanted to smell that. And it was their first perfume. And did we smell Broad? We didn't. I didn't.
I
Did you?
uh, I
I
feel
didn't.
like I
Yeah.
did. I feel like I did smell it, but I honestly can't remember it. To be like, I don't want to say like I'd be lying if I said I liked it or I didn't like it because now I can't actually remember it because they had two like Ride was a new one. What was the one before? There was another one that was released just before. So yeah, I think I smelled them, but I can't tell you anything about them, Michelle, because I literally can't remember.
Yeah. And
And
Michelle,
that's been, yeah.
and
Go
Michelle,
ahead, Ryan.
my favorite was Queer Ottoman, which I don't have my like samples handy. I wasn't planning on jumping on a live stream tonight, so they're all in the other room in like a mess of
Michelle has that one, yeah,
yeah, lovely.
yeah.
I did not
Um,
see Line and Nerd there. I know they're
no,
from, I feel like they're from America though. I don't know if they're France based. Um, but I didn't see them there. No. But you know what? There was Himo Jomo. So that kind of satisfied that aspect of perfume for me. And I was literally on their website today reading their blog. So that's going to be a brand that I discovered this
I totally agree with Mark's comment. Like Parfum d'Empire is one of those brands that kind of like generally most of the stuff I've smelled, whether I love it or not, smells like it's a type of brand that you can't sort of quantify, but can like kind of imagine that. Yeah, it feels like this is a quality. They make quality perfumes. They don't they don't seem to be, well, I believe they're not an influencer brand as well. Like they're not trying to send dozens and dozens of bottles out to get exposure. They just do their own thing. They make they got the one perfumer behind everything. It just feels like it's a brand that like a true that kind of a true to their vision and keep doing that. So I've always been a fan of Parfum Empire.
I I had not really sampled Parfum d'Empire, so I had wanted to try. That's one of the brands that I actually said to Henna and Pep that I really wanted to focus in on because I'd heard such lovely things about them, and my impression just from an initial pass through was just that there was a wonderful period for niche perfumes before like 2010 where you had like houses like Diptyque and L'Artisan Parfumeur and Serge Lutens like firing on all cylinders with like these really interesting well-rounded creations that felt like they were created for, and I don't mean this with any sort of like condescension, but like a very like kind of like mature perfume lover, somebody who really likes perfume and is kind of like looking for the elevated version of that. And that to me feels like where Parfum d'Empire kind of sits now, along with some other brands. And the other piece was that the other thing is like that's very interesting is when you smell a lot of perfume all together, the highs really stand out, right? Like the really well-made perfume stands out very quickly. I think because it's just very quick to see what is made with the level of depth that you're finding in something like Parfum d'Empire and some of the other brands I tried. Like for example, I think Les Indomables is a wonderful brand in the same sort of like this is a brand that has been very thoughtfully considered with thoughtfully considered creations. Not a single perfumer for Les Indomables, but it is. I don't know that I can't wait to dig even further into their catalog. I didn't want to put the poor people attending to us through the paces of letting me smell every single thing in their not tiny catalog, but I was impressed.
Yeah.
I mean, for those of you who haven't been, again, like we haven't even talked about the other stuff that happens at Esxence as well, like the Osmotec stand, the exhibit there, all the panels and workshops that they have. So there is all that other kind of benefit for like perfume enthusiasts that actually want to learn about perfume. So like there was all of that there, even that I would say that alone is worth going to Esxence, even if you didn't smell any of the exhibiting brands. If you went to those workshops and talks and smelled and had a look at what Osmotec have set up, like that is a pretty good experience in my opinion.
I mean, they had a talk on like trending perfume, like perfume trends for this year and upcoming. So if you are someone that is interested in perfume and are writing about it, like that would be really good to attend too. I mean, you could kind of see the trends. Like Ryan, you were saying like what's good stands out, but also the trends really stand out when you smell so many things together.
What did you think were some of the trends that you smelled? Because actually wasn't thinking about that too much. So, like,
Hmm.
if someone asked me, I don't know what I would tell them, like in terms of
Oh,
what trends I was smelling.
I think there was definitely white floral. So there was quite a few gardenia perfumes.
Ah,
Mas
yeah, true,
Milano had
true.
gardenia, and then they had other white florals. And there was another brand too that was pretty big and had a gardenia perfume specifically. Perfumes for women was really big, and I think Olfactive Studio with the three perfumes that were specifically geared to women. That's the first time I've ever seen that. I've sold a lot of perfume on eBay. I will tell you something, that men's perfume sells like this. Like, men will buy whatever they want to buy, and women will kind of think about it and will think about whether it's worth it. But that must be shifting if Olfactive Studio is coming out with a line of perfumes that are feminine. So I
But
think women are having a moment.
I just want to say though, we smelled that those three perfumes that were made for women, but
Hmm.
I smelled them myself, and I would totally like wear all three. So that was interesting, the fact that they went in that direction to say they were inspired by women. I don't know if like yeah, I
I
guess they
mean,
were
that must have had something to do with market research. Like, Olfactive
yeah
Studio is not a small brand,
yeah
so I feel like they have some intel, and Mas Milano for sure has, um, information that says that this is what's going to do well now, and so has those three feminine perfumes. And that was the trend that I noticed.
yeah. Did you? What about you, Ryan? Did you pick up on anything?
Well, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I didn't spend as much time at Esxence to really gauge the trends of the market and what was coming up in the new releases. I would say I did come into Esxence having smelled like everything I had wanted to smell for the most part in Milan by that point. Like, I had gone through the day before and had like pummeled all the different perfume shops and things like that. And I think what had become very clear, even just like in the short time I spent in Essence, is just like how many brands were structured around like a cookie cutter. Like, we have to have X version of this scent and X version of this scent, and you need this one and this gap to
Like
create.
what though? Like what? What were the cookie cutter things?
Okay, you need an incense perfume that is probably frankincense in particular heavy in some way, shape, or form. You need a sandalwood. You need an oud of some sort, which is now
An
getting
amber,
an amber. Everybody's got like their
a
version of
gourmand.
the gourmand. Like it's like a cookie cutter like niche line like assembly, uh, and it's it was cool to see which brands didn't fit neatly into that. And then it was also very clear like which ones kind of fit into that and weren't doing anything interesting, and we kind of like move quickly by. I don't know. Because like I had my Essence experience sandwiched on both sides. So like I did a lot of like sampling in Milan boutiques before I went to Essence, and then after Essence, I went to Florence and smelled a whole lot of perfume like every day that I was in Florence, because there's a lot of interesting
Yeah.
perfume down there. But one of the things that I did while I was there was everybody told me I had to do it, and I was very excited to do it, was the Villoresi Perfume Museum, which is wonderful.
Okay, so tell us about that, because that was like your
Yeah,
highlight.
So for those who don't know, I love Lorenzo Villoresi as a perfumer. I really love what that his work stands for and his sensibilities. And so he has a boutique kind of off the beaten path a little bit in Florence. You have to go kind of hunt for it and know where you're going. But a lovely museum built into the boutique. The museum is like by reservation only, so you do have to kind of arrange that in advance. It's not like you can just show up one day and go see the museum. They bring in somebody to do it.
So
But
how far in advance did you reserve your place?
weeks.
Okay, so before you left.
Yeah, so I was tagging along with a giant school trip that of French students that was
No way.
there. So they were kind of like, they kind of included me in this experience with all these, like I was
Cool.
there. I was there with like 25 French students experiencing perfume for the first time, which actually was a great way to get to experience the museum, because the museum is targeted not just to like somebody who knows perfume very well, but it's actually such a generally great introduction to perfume and raw materials in perfumery and how those have been used over the years to assemble into a final perfume. It's lovely. It's so interactive. You're smelling all the raw materials. You know, you want to smell what the ambergris thing, you can just pull up the ambergris canister and smell it there alongside, like, you know, the raw labdanum and all the resins. It was actually my favorite thing that I did there was like get to sample all the resins back to back. So I could like, oh, this is Tolu balsam versus Peru balsam, and like kind of like just side by side start to pick up the differences between them. But at the end, the reason I was thinking about this is like they get to the giant like fragrance genre wheel and have like all of Lorenzo Villaresi's perfumes arranged according to the genre. And one thing I appreciated is, I don't know if they say this every tour, but the instructor was very clear. Lorenzo Villaresi hates the Chypre, he hates aquatics, and he hates fougères, and he's never going to make those. So we don't have any of those for you to smell, but we can do all the other genres.
They can't just say something like that and then not explain why.
But does he like gourmands? Like, does he make gourmands? That's my real question.
I can't think of one that I would call a gourmand.
That's what's trending right now. That's what people want.
They shared one that the instructor called as like having gourmand facets. It would not qualify as a gourmand in my book. Okay. I don't think
just carry.
No, but he's not done a gourmand. He won't do an aquatic. And aquatics, like marine fragrances, are very.
I can get on board.
What he did instead was he created like a fragrance that is citrus based to reference the sea, and tried to use citrus to create kind of like a seashore ambiance to lovely fragrance. But the highlight of the museum is also like, I don't know, like smelling raw castoreum, and like you should have seen all the students when they pick up the civet like jar, what their faces look like when they got a face of that. That was one reason why it was lovely to be there with like all these like, you know, younger people like experiencing for the first time, like with
like normal people, like people that aren't conditioned to be like, this smells good. Like they're just smelling it for the first time and they're like, ew, this is disgusting, but it does.
Yes. And I don't know. It was a wonderful experience. What I say, I just kind of appreciate that Villaresi refuses to do like a check the boxes kind of approach to his own fragrance line, and you just feel that very much, especially when you start to sample it like all together in the way that museum experience actually had like forced you to do, because they kind of go category by category, and we're going to let you smell an example of each subgenre minus the three we mentioned at the end. Which was great because I was already very familiar with Villaresi's perfumes, but like some of these, I was like, oh man, this is kind of like, this is a little bit more tempting now. So like now I've got, you know, more things on my wish list that I didn't have going into that visit, of course. But it is it's a lovely experience, and I recommend people.
If I remember correctly, that it's also where it's located, you get a really beautiful view of the city as well.
You do. Yeah. It's right, like it's essentially across the river from like the Uffizi gallery, and it's a little bit quieter, like you can see where it's nice, but there's other boutiques there. The Silano Coloni boutique is there right nearby. For his boutique perfumes, and there's it's just a lovely walking space. It's also on the walk up if you're going to do it, which I did one of the days, all the way up to San Miniato, right? Which is a lovely walk. You get a lovely view of the city from up there too, so you can kind of like go up there and come back down and swing by Lorenzo Villaresi on the way down. Florence is an easy city to walk around. I I can't speak highly enough of folks who want to like bake in a little visit to Florence on their trip to Esxence, because like it organically felt like a very nice continuation of what I had been doing and experiencing.
Definitely. And for anyone thinking about it, there's no reason you have to go to Exxence and go every single day. You could just do a day or two and then do a day trip to Florence or wherever you wanted to go. I
Or
just want to,
even if you don't go to Exxence, you still go to Milan,
yeah,
hang out with everybody, and
yeah,
then still go to Florence. Like you
yeah,
don't even have to
absolutely.
register for the show.
No, just go to perfumeries and do a bit of shopping and eat some food. And
And
I was just thinking how talking to you too just now made me like really have a craving for a Negroni right now.
For sure.
I actually had one before getting on the stream. I and I also want to say this to folks who are considering going. Like the public transportation in Italy is great. Actually, coming through the experience, Henna clued me into the subway, which I should have been using in Milan from day one. Actually, fairly easy to navigate, very affordable. The train from Milan to Florence is easy peasy, like painless experience. Drops you off in you pretty much like can get from center of Milan to the center of Florence with like about 2 hour travel time, perfectly feasible for a day trip. So do it.
I didn't realize Florence was that close. 2 hours?
2 hours. Yeah.
Pretty good.
It is
You could do a day trip in theory. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Take one of the early trains and take one of the late trains back.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be fine.
Yeah.
And then did you go to Santa Maria Novella in Florence also, Ryan?
I did.
But not as impressive?
So Santa Maria Novella in Florence has one of the loveliest buildings you've ever seen, right? It is, and it's gorgeous. They have flowers outside in the hall as you walk in, and the perfumes are so beautifully displayed and so easy to smell. Yes, it was a high speed train, Michelle. So like Santa Maria Novella was lovely. I would say it's less intimate than the experience you're getting at the Villaresi Boutique because there's just more foot traffic, right? The Villaresi Boutique,
bigger as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's much bigger. Yeah. It's many rooms. It's gorgeous. I loved my time there, but the Villaresi Boutique is like, you don't go into the Villaresi Boutique unless you're like a Villaresi person. So like Santa Maria Novella has a lot more like people just kind of coming in to like check out what they've heard is like one of the world's oldest perfumeries. It's lovely though. I loved Santa Maria Novella. I also want to give, I mean, there are a number of lovely buildings. The best building that I thought a perfumery had was actually Aquaflor, which is a little bit further off the path, but they have a gorgeous, again, like Santa Maria Novella, like multiple room experience in this sort of like very gorgeous building with like a courtyard, all kinds of stuff. So when I say, with all seriousness, every day in Florence, I discovered a new perfume shop with a new like perfume brand that I had never heard of, without fail, at least one a day, sometimes more than one a day. I'm not exaggerating. That is how it was in Florence. There's a lot of really interesting boutique perfume in Florence.
I want to go back to some of the people talking about trends, and I know a couple of people were talking about tuberose. It's true, but I think not only tuberose, and Hannah touched on it earlier. I think it's mainly white florals because we smelled at least 2 or 3 new gardenia perfumes. Definitely tuberose. Nishane, their new release is a tuberose perfume. Also, just interestingly, when we were at the Les Indomadables stand, Remy gave us a sneak. Not, I don't know if he basically let us smell the main ingredient, the main raw material that's going to be in their next release. And when there were three of us who smelled it. You weren't there, Ryan, but it was like Henna, myself, and another guy we met there. And we all kind of smelled it, and we all thought it was like I initially thought Henna said it was tuberose. I thought it was jasmine, and then the guy with us, because we guessed wrong, it was basically an orange blossom raw material, but it all had all the facets of that of that of jasmine, of tuberose. So like it was a really interesting orange blossom raw material that we were smelling. So just as a heads up, the next Les Indomadables will be featuring a very interesting orange blossom material. I can't remember what he said it was going to be like sort of mixed with, or what the other main ingredients were, but that was interesting. So yeah, like I would agree, white florals, but like I never feel like white florals go out of fashion in perfume.
They're kind of like a universal trend
Yeah,
in some ways.
yeah.
But I am curious now, hearing gardenia in particular, did any stand out? Because gardenia is a note that I particularly like, and I didn't sample any of these with you all. So if there's something I need to catch up with on my own cognizance, I shall do so.
Well, look, I used to grow gardenia in my garden, but unfortunately I let it die, and but I was lucky enough to get some flowers from it, and like nothing beat, like to me it's my favorite. It's my favorite scented flower of all time. Like I love the smell of gardenia, and very rarely have I smelled it in a perfume where I think, wow, that smells just like the flower. But I got to smell. So I've got samples here. These are the line of three perfumes from Masque Milano,
Oh, okay.
all inspired by women, whether they be like I think they're all fictional women
Mhm.
characters, or in literature, or whatever. This perfume here is Catherine. All right, so if anyone wants to make a note, I would highly recommend to smell this when it's available to smell, because to me it's kind of the closest it's come to a really, like what I consider a really good gardenia note as well. So yeah, so
I took a
that
note
would
of
be my
that.
recommendation.
I took that down. That is very exciting to me.
Yeah.
I will try that at the earliest possible opportunity.
Did you catch that, Hannah? I was just
Yeah.
talking about the Masque Milano Cath. Do you remember what I I I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I feel like we smelled another perfume that was gardenia based as well, that we kind of really liked, but I can't remember it. And I'm not sure if
Yeah,
it was
I
one of the
can't.
new olfactive studio ones.
I feel like it was one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. Is the goal to be as close to real gardenia as you can, or is the goal to be, I don't know, to give people something they haven't smelled before?
I was just saying, when I smelled Catherine though, it was not not so much that the perfume smells like I'm smelling a gardenia, but the gardenia note in it, like, really was close to a real gardenia. But the perfume
Hmm.
itself was beautiful because of everything else that was blended with it. I can't answer. I can't remember. I can look it up, but it's definitely. I can find out which Catherine that is. They did tell us. I just can't remember.
I can't tell you both how excited I am to know that there's a new really interesting gardenia perfume in the
Yeah.
world.
I don't want to get everyone's hopes high that it's going to smell photorealistic gardenia.
Were you
I
sarcastic about that, Ryan?
No,
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 he's
no. Did you miss the portion where I was so excited when Pep said gardenia was a trend that I was like,
I could hear it all. I heard you say you were going to sample it on your own. I just like if there was a gardenia perfume on a blotter, I would not immediately pass it to you. So
okay,
maybe
yeah,
I will now.
that's fair. It doesn't
Yeah.
fit the stereotype I've created for myself, but it is it's one of my favorite floral notes, along with magnolia, and like both of them together. Like for example, I love Goutal's Un Matin d'Orage, which is a gardenia and magnolia scent like after the rain has happened. So it's kind of like evoking that scent of like a slightly damp, kind of humid day with those flowers. And that to me is like childhood memory material for me. So I kind of like zero in on things that have nicely rendered gardenia notes.
Wasn't it great how while we were all smelling together, at one point, like I remember passing you a scent strip being like, this is for you. Like you're gonna like this. And you were like, okay, we've reached that portion of our smelling where immediately you can tell what I like and you can just pass it to me. Like that was my favorite part.
I'm just checking something, guys, because I might have said that Catherine was the gardenia, but now, oh no, I'm just looking at Fragrantica to see if there was any more information. But when I look at the note list on Fragrantica, they don't even name gardenia, so that's
I think
weird.
no, I think Catherine was the guardian.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think
And
you're
when we
wrong
was
about
talk
that.
and when we were talking to the Mask Milano person, like when she was explaining, she did definitely mentioned gardenia. It's just I'm just like I suddenly became not sure because I didn't see it listed as a note. So I could smell it though. So um, yeah, I'm not sure. I'll try and find out who the Catherine is that is in inspiration. Um, all right. Oh, we're already at 2 hours. So guys, in the chat, is there anything else that we haven't talked about, Exxence or Milan itself, that we feel like we should talk about, or should we just take any questions that people have? I will say next year, if anyone is interested in coming, right, or going to Exxence, they've already confirmed that next year's event is on the 19th to the 22nd of February, so it's earlier than it was this year, and this year was actually earlier than last year. So I think it's just a matter of when they can, book the space that they need to do it. So other than that, we had a great. I mean, I'm not speaking for you guys, but I had a fantastic time. It all
I
went
had a great time too.
too quickly, and it's already been a week since since I left. So
I'm ready to hop on a plane and go back. Like honestly, if you were like if you were messaging me and you're like, hey, we're all going back to Italy next month, it's like I would try to find a way to make it work. Like
man, I have to say, if I was that wealthy that I could like just afford to fly anywhere whenever I wanted, I feel like I would be going somewhere new every couple of weeks.
Oh sure, that's the dream,
Yeah.
isn't it?
But like to go and be with perfume people is extra special.
Yeah, absolutely. I
It
mean,
just is. It just is
that
extra special.
look, frankly, that was the absolute best part of it. Like
Yeah.
Exxence was good, but the bits I'm going to remember are the bits outside of Exxence.
The
So like,
shopping.
yeah, the shopping. but the dinners, the drinks, like
Yeah.
it was great, and walking around the Milan neighborhoods, that was fantastic. The perfumeries.
They
Uh,
are, and we didn't make it out to the one boutique that carries the Filippo Sorcinelli boutique, but I was doing the thing. There's a nice subway stop right there. We could have gone.
Next time.
yeah,
That's
next time.
obviously a next time thing.
Yeah, make a list of stuff we didn't do, and we'll do it next time.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, if no one in the chat has any last minute questions, Michelle's going to Sicily. Lucky you.
Remember, that's just around the corner, I
know.
feel.
Yeah,
that's like that at this
That's
point.
Yeah.
Sicily's my
Totally.
motherland. Yeah, I would love to, Michelle, but I can't too soon. And it's going to be fantastic weather. Thanks, guys. All right, Ryan, Henna, thank you so much for this couple of hours. It was fun to relive everything.
Totally. It was so much fun.
And hopefully, like we get to do it again next year.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to everyone in the chat watching and commenting. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you all soon with another video or a live stream. And have a good rest of the day, guys.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.